We've spoken a lot about abandoned and defunct attractions on this channel, but equally as fascinating to me are the plans for attractions that never came to be. Producing an attraction for a theme park is a long, expensive, and difficult process, and sometimes things just don't go to plan. For whatever reason, sometimes a ride gets scrapped, cancelled, or quietly forgotten about before it ever takes its first riders. In this video, I'm going to explore 5 rides that were confirmed, teased, or strongly rumoured to be coming to Australian theme parks, only to never open to the public. There's a couple that you probably know about, but maybe some you never heard of. I hope you'll find them interesting. If you do, or if you'd just like to support the channel, please consider clicking the like and subscribe buttons to help against the algorithm, and leave a comment with your thoughts down below. Soarin' over the Gold Coast, Warner Brothers Movie World. The Soarin series of flight simulator rides are popular attractions at the Disney parks around the world that use a large half-dome screen and effects such as winds and artificial scents to simulate flying over various locations around the world. The first of these rides was the famous Soarin' over California, which opened at Disney's California Adventure Park in February 2001. Today, there are also versions of Soarin' at Shanghai Disneyland and Tokyo DisneySea. Soarin' over California was regarded as the one success in what was a poorly received park overall by Disney's standards. With many of the park's rides failing to live up to the lofty standards usually set by Disney, Soarin' was the one exception. This was regarded as the world's first flying theater, and the revolutionary ride experience, which took guests on a flight over famous Californian sites and landmarks, was lauded as the one major victory of the California Adventure Park. Today, flying theater rides are quite common around the world, including, of course, DreamWorld's Sky Voyager, which opened to the public in 2019. But actually, Movie World were heavily rumored to be receiving a clone of Soarin' long before Sky Voyager was even imagined. In July 2004, Australian amusement fanatics reported that Movie World would be building a new attraction at a price tag of $13 million, with the rumoured location being the area previously occupied by the Maverick Grand Illusion Show stage, which is currently the site of the dormant WB Studio Showcase. This would replace the Western-themed Illusion Show, which had ceased back in 2001, leaving the building and stage dormant in the 3 years since. Richard Wilson of Parkz reported that the park were supposedly planning on their own take of Soarin' over California. Speculation in the article suggesting that the flying theater could have been themed to Superman, since a new Superman film was in production at the time, or may have taken a generic Gold Coast theme, much like Soarin's California theme, with panoramic shots of Surfers Paradise and the Gold Coast hinterland. Finally, a way to experience the majesty of the Gold Coast from above. I can't think of a way to do that in real life. Parkz reported that the attraction was in development, but that Movie World were yet to release any official information, and that official information would ultimately never come. Nothing permanent has ever occupied the Maverick building ever since, with the space being utilized for temporary exhibitions of movie props and memorabilia. DreamWorld's Sky Voyager does feature some Gold Coast-based scenes in its Australian-themed show, including a flyover of Surfers Paradise, but the show itself actually covers Australia in its entirety, and DreamWorld have also incorporated temporary versions of the Sky Voyager with American and African Sky Voyager experiences. Movie World did open a 4D theater experience in 2005 though, opening their own version of the Shrek 4D Adventure, which had become popular at the Universal Studios parks, being built in their Roxy Theatre. This motion simulator style cinema experience has remained at the park ever since, albeit with an ever-changing feature presentation, currently themed to The Wizard of Oz, and having previously featured Journey to the Center of the Earth, Ice Age, Rio, and Looney Tunes themed experiences. The former Maverick building remains unused aside from temporary exhibitions and the scare mazes for Fright Nights. Orphan Rocker, Scenic World. Built in 1945, Scenic World in the Blue Mountains is a tourist attraction focused primarily on rides and experiences that offer unique vantage points from the spectacular cliffs surrounding the town of Katoomba. The park is most famous for its scenic Skyway, a cable car which traverses 270 meters above the valley floor, and the Scenic Railway, an incline railway and one of the world's steepest passenger railways. However, what gives the park notoriety among coaster enthusiasts, and arguably the most famous ride concept to have never opened to the public in Australian history, is the Orphan Rocker. Named after nearby Orphan Rock, this coaster was built and designed in-house by park owner Philip Hammond and would have been the first coaster ever to be completely designed and manufactured in Australia. It was originally intended as a simple scenic monorail ride, but began to take on a more thrilling nature during the planning process. Traversing 840 meters of track and with a supposed top speed of 45 kilometers an hour, the ride featured one-of-a-kind rocking cars, with the highlight of the attraction being a swooping turn at the edge of a 200-meter cliff. Construction on the coaster actually commenced in 1984, with the ride's layout being completed by 1988. However, the project would run into hurdles that led to its very existence becoming one of the greatest mysteries in Australian theme parks. Urban legends tell of sandbags never returning from test runs, although Philip Hammond insisted that he had ridden the ride himself many times perfectly safely. The park's owners said that complaints from local residents about the presence of a noisy roller coaster, potentially about to be filled with screaming guests in the middle of the idyllic Blue Mountains National Park, were what led to the significant delays in the development process. The park would later decide to shift their focus and investment to the Scenic, later known as the Scenic Cableway, which opened in the year 2000 and provides a cable car link from the valley floor to the park at the top of the cliffs. Throughout the 1990s and early 2000s, several alterations were made to the Orphan Rocker structure that seemingly suggested the park still had interest in one day opening the ride to the public. Every now and then, the hubs on wheels would be replaced or a section of track would be worked on, suggesting that works were continuing, only for the ride to remain dormant, simply a twisted, idle structure weaving through the dense bushland below the park. The mystery and saga came to its ultimate conclusion in 2017 when Scenic World began removing sections of Orphan Rocker's mostly unused track to make way for small upgrade works around the park, with managing director Anthea Hammond, who is Philip's daughter, giving a rather mysterious final statement on the ride to the Daily Telegraph. "We don't generally comment on the Orphan Rocker. To be honest, it is what it is. I am happy to grow and evolve Scenic World, and the rocker didn't fit with what we were doing. So I wasn't particularly heartbroken by it." Segments of Orphan Rocker still stand to this day, but it will never open to the public. Only a handful of people are known to have ever experienced it in the ride's limited test runs. Safari Coaster, African Safari World. Over the years, Village Roadshow theme parks have taken on the management of many different properties around Australia and even overseas. But it is an attraction for one of their planned parks that never came to be that might be one of Australia's biggest roller coaster mysteries. In 2010, Village Roadshow were promising to deliver the country's greatest ever roller coaster. But what might it have actually been? The Mystery Coaster's story dates back to 2008 when plans were unveiled for Village Roadshow to purchase Werribee Open Range Zoo to the west of Melbourne and convert it into a $220 million theme park zoo hybrid project named African Safari World, designed in the style of Disney's Animal Kingdom or Busch Gardens Tampa. Werribee is a 225-hectare African-themed open-range zoo with several different trails that allow guests to see animals in large, expansive habitats. The park was slated for a 2010 opening. Village Roadshow's plan was to develop the zoo into a theme park with confirmed attractions including a four-dimensional theatre, Australian animal experience, a wildlife education and conservation centre, increased animal numbers and habitats, and a range of rides, including water rides, and a roller coaster project that the proposal simply dubbed Australia's greatest roller coaster. The proposal was met with a mixed response from Zoos Victoria and Werribee themselves. While Zoos Victoria CEO Andrew Fairley suggested that they would be eager to work on a proposal to work side by side with Village, the public statement from Zoos Victoria themselves described the plans as unsatisfactory. While Village promised that the project would draw 1.3 million guests every year, adding almost $1 billion a year to the Victorian economy, ultimately the Victorian state government would reject the proposal, drawing celebration from animal welfare groups who opposed the decision to potentially decrease the animals' habitat sizes in order to fit theme park attractions. Little, therefore, would ever be revealed about the plans for the African Safari World project, aside from some very low-resolution concept art and the early plans for Australia's greatest roller coaster, a loss to time, probably known only to those who were involved in the planning process. Let me know in the comments what you think it might have been. Personally, some of my theories include a B&M dive coaster or inverted coaster, considering the park's obvious inspiration from Busch Gardens Tampa. A clone of SheiKra or Montu would certainly have been one of Australia's greatest roller coasters at the time. Some of the other possibilities I thought of could have been an Intamin Megalite or perhaps a full-scale mega coaster. The Megalite was a relatively new and popular model at the time, during a phase when Village was working quite regularly with the Swiss manufacturer. If we want to be really ambitious, it could even have been a prefabricated wooden coaster, with T-Express opening around the same time as these plans were being made. We'll never know what Melbourne's safari coaster was truly going to be, or whether Village had even decided on a ride type or ride manufacturer at the time, but sadly, Australia's so-called greatest coaster never came to be. The original storm coaster, SeaWorld. Around the same time as Village were fighting for their African Safari World proposal, they were also making some mixed decisions at SeaWorld that resulted in a very confusing time for the park. SeaWorld made a few very misguided investments in the second half of the 2000s, building the short-lived SeaWorld Eye only to be forced to remove it less than 2 years later, and investing in an Intamin Surf Rider only to suddenly change their minds and relocate the project to Wet n Wild. While 2008 would ultimately be a successful year for new projects at SeaWorld, with Jet Rescue opening later in the year, that coaster was not the original plan for that year. Plans published by the Gold Coast City Council revealed something that might look very familiar to you now, but would have been very different at the time. Yes, in 2008, SeaWorld had plans in place to construct a Mark water coaster, with the station occupying the land that is currently home to Penguin Encounter, and a layout stretching out over the car park. This would have been a very slightly modified version of Storm Coaster as we know it today. Aside from a slight change to the flume section, the ride's layout would have been in essence identical to Storm Coaster, and an earlier opening date of 2008 actually would have made this ride the first of its kind, predating Dewars Summerland's Skatoen, which opened in 2011. Further documents revealed that SeaWorld were in negotiations with government and council over the requirements for works and adjustments to be made to the car park in order to accommodate the ride's 5,000 square metre layout. Plans were seemingly pitched to the Queensland government and progressed to a fairly advanced stage, but evidence seems to suggest that SeaWorld moved away from their original water coaster plans long before these plans were leaked to the public. Parkz forums users who were Village employees at the time stated that this was not the next ride coming to SeaWorld and not the site of their next ride. Evidently, at this stage, staff had been given previews of Jet Rescue, and the plans they were seeing on the forums conflicted with what they'd been told at their workplace. It's not known why SeaWorld abandoned their original water coaster plans. Rumors suggest that they failed to receive certain approvals or grants that were necessary to do the works on the car park. But regardless, it was scrapped, and the water coaster concept was eventually revived 5 years later, taking over the Bermuda Triangle plot instead and becoming Storm Coaster. However, that wasn't the end of this weird saga of project cancellations and confusion for SeaWorld in 2008. An announced hippo attraction set for the current Ray Reef plot around the same time was also cancelled, yet another in what was seemingly a string of investment plans from SeaWorld that Village abandoned at the last minute. And, coincidentally, during the construction of Storm Coaster, SeaWorld also announced plans for an attraction simply known as Wild, only to cancel those plans as well. Really a very chaotic and intriguing time in the park's history. At this point, SeaWorld could have announced that they were changing a light bulb, and I would have fully anticipated the plans to be cancelled a few days later. Doomsday Tower, Warner Brothers Movie World. The cancelled attraction that has always fascinated me the most is Movie World's Doomsday Tower. This might be one of the only times in Australian history that a park itself has announced plans for a new attraction, only to go quiet of those plans and never speak of them again. Unveiled in a guest survey in 2012, complete with concept art, the Doomsday Tower was an attraction unlike anything the world has ever seen. Standing a whopping 145 meters tall and towering above Superman Escape from the land inside its helix that today is home to Flash Speed Force, Doomsday Tower was set to become the tallest freestanding ride in the world, surpassing the giant drop by almost 30 meters. Fascinatingly, this would not be a drop tower, but a unique ride model similar in form to a Huss Condor. This ride type features spinning outward-facing gondolas that rotate around the tower. The guest survey stated that the Doomsday Tower would have a mild cycle and a thrilling cycle. There would be a mild cycle with a slow, scenic ride for those who just wanted views of the Gold Coast, and a high-speed version for those who were looking for a thrilling experience. The survey stated that the ride would alternate between the scenic and thrill modes at designated times during the day. To me, this was such a bizarre inclusion for so many reasons, and as a young enthusiast, it fascinated me. Firstly, Batwing Space Shot already existed about 15 or 20 meters away from the proposed Doomsday Tower site, making another tower ride that would dwarf Batwing at more than double its height a completely bizarre choice. Oh, what the f***? But even putting that aside, there was so much about this ride choice that was just strange. While the scenic aspect of the ride is somewhat appealing, Movie World seemed determined to market it as another one of their superhero-themed thrill rides. But the design concept just wasn't great for either a scenic ride or a thrill ride. The seating position involved guests having their legs hanging free, which would have been terrifying enough for many people who might have been interested in the scenic ride. And the spinning mechanism just seems a bit too tame for the record-breaking mega thrill ride that thrill seekers would want it to be. It was the ultimate compromise that would satisfy absolutely no one. Nothing about the choice of the ride or its placement or its theme seemed quite right. And frankly, in hindsight, I personally believe that this was simply pitched just as a way of snatching the height record from Dreamworld, which had Giant Drop and Tower of Terror as their flagship attraction at the time. It was literally a theme park measuring contest. After the guest survey, the concept floated around in enthusiast spaces like the Parkz forums for some time after Movie World had revealed it, only for it to unsurprisingly never happen. Had the Doomsday Tower been built, it would still be the equal second tallest ride in the world today, alongside Six Flags Qiddiya City's Sirocco Tower, and behind only Falcon's Flight. Which one of these would have been your favorite, or would it be one of the ones I missed? The Joker's Funhouse Raptor, the Vekoma Boomerang at Luna Park Melbourne? There's so much more in the world of theme parks to talk about, so you should subscribe so that you don't miss my next video. If you'd like to support the channel, please consider becoming a Keith Monorail Army member for 48 hours of early access to every single video and many more perks as well. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day.